1. After finding out what Alana's past was with Sugarbeard, I was a little concerned and conflicted. Although highly socially awkward, he seemed to usually mean well with me. Obsessive tendencies like fantasizing over someone heavily enough that you draw them sexually without permission and continue to harass them even though they ask you to stop, those tendencies take a lot of intervention to completely go away. He had finally left Alana mostly alone, and I was worried the same kind of pattern could happen to another girl along the road. I was friendly to him. If I ran into him on my way to classes, in the halls, or in the lobby, he did have a habit of not being able to stop whatever tangent he got off on, whether it be about anime adaptations compared to manga, light novels, or the original game, or about which retro and indie video games are unforgettable. Luckily, since my schedule was usually so packed, I was able to excuse myself if he went on too long or made me uncomfortable. The uncomfortable comments steadily became less common. He seemed to start picking up on my body language with time, but he still struggled to know what was appropriate to talk about. Because beardy attitudes are so entertaining, here are some of the highlight uncomfortable moments. 1. He asked me if Hawaiian hula dancers wear anything under their grass skirts, completely out of the blue. I told him I'd never been to Hawaii, wasn't Hawaiian, and didn't know. Then he asked if I was a lesbian, if I'd enjoy it if they weren't wearing anything underneath. To which I replied I wouldn't because I don't like strangers flashing me. 2. He tried to reason that over-sexualizing women in video games past the point of physics was okay, as long as the woman was badass because they also do that to buff guys in video games. I was kinda with him, until he said that these super sexy women like Lara Croft made men respect women more because a man could have a boner but also be intimidated. One night, I was in the campus library studying for an exam. It was pretty late and most people had already left. I got stuck on a chemistry problem on the whiteboard. I heard a soft knock on the glass door of the study room I was in. I turned to see Sugarbeard waving excitedly at me. I waved in return. I turned back round, thinking he'd pass by and let me continue studying. I heard the door open. "I'm really good at chemistry. You look like you're struggling." I shrugged. I guess I can use some help. He had an excited bounce in his step when he walked up to the whiteboard and picked up one of the markers. He added some scrawl above the transformation in my equation. He grinned like he thought I'd understand. I winced at the writing. "I can't read your handwriting." He scowled. "I wrote heat on your transformation. That process won't happen without it." "Oh, thanks," I said. "What's the next one?" he asked eagerly. When I finally felt ready for my exam, I started to pack up. "Can I ask you something?" Sugarbeard said weakly. "I guess." "I didn't hurt Alana's rabbit, right?" He looked down at the table, shrinking back in a way that made him look like he wanted to melt. "I don't think so," I said. Definitely weren't any signs of damage, and he acted normal very shortly after. He let out a relieved breath. "I wasn't allowed to have pets growing up. My mom thinks they're dirty. So my only experiences with animals are the zoo and hunting with my dad when I was little." "And that's why you appeal to animal instincts." I was piecing it together. "Because your experience with rabbits is flushing them out of their burrows." "Yeah," he said weakly. "I could only flush them out. My dad was always disappointed with me, because I never could bring myself to shoot one. Never mind." I didn't want to look like a big hero to Alana either. I was worried about her because that rabbit helps her so much. But I didn't expect anything from her. I'm not a pervert like that. I paused, pondering if I should ask the next part. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. "If you're not a pervert, why did you draw those pictures over your freshman year?" He went white as a sheet. "You know about those," he squeaked. I nodded. "I went too far." Then he started spluttering, trying to find the words. She never thought of herself as beautiful. She had a negative body image. I couldn't let her treat herself that way. I mean, I still screwed up. That wasn't my intention." I'm confused. Those drawings, the way I forced compliments on her, I just wanted her to see she was beautiful. I didn't care if she hated me for it. I figured everyone seems to hate me eventually, so if I went too far... I drew those pictures sort of as a final statement, one elegant, one sexy. She had to see she was beautiful in every way. I kept to myself that she found both of them sexual. After all, art is often interpreted differently. There was one last thing I had to know. You made some sexist comments to her too. I'm old-fashioned, he admitted. My family is old-fashioned, I grew up old-fashioned. But she's so girly, and she likes to cook and sew. I thought domestic tasks would make her happy to do. You already know this, but I don't understand women very well. You're improving, I tried to say gently. He blushed a little. There was this one time I really screwed up along those lines. She said something about how when people marry into her family, they get the family recipes. I said something really screwed up, like that I wanted to become part of a family. It just sounded so nice to have a warm group of people around you like that. And she's so close to my dream girl anyway that I just let my inner thoughts slip out. I considered for a long time. Well, this explains it. That doesn't excuse it yet. You should apologize and explain to her. The defeated look on his face made my heart sink. I don't have the guts, he said in a choked voice. He looked down at the table again and looked even more like he wanted to melt and disappear. There was a long moment of silence. You're a good guy at heart, I reassured him. You just really, really struggle communicating. He snapped his head back up, his eyes wide. He went white again, stood up abruptly, stumbled towards me, and jerkily moved his arms around me. He had me in an awkward hug. He was shaking a little. Thank you, he managed. I gave him a small squeeze in return. He was a little too warm and clammy, but it wasn't so uncomfortable that I wanted to crawl out of my skin. I was very surprised that even close up he didn't stink. The smell was pungent and strong, but not unpleasant. Sort of like the way Indian food is. He had potential to get better as a hugger. He released me after a moment or two. Can we hang out sometime? I thought for a second. The where and when might need to be planned out a bit. We don't have any classes together, I'm busy all the time. Alana doesn't know the truth yet, and Sourbeard is... I'm thinking about getting a D&D group together, Sugarbeard admitted sheepishly. Sourbeard says I can invite whoever I want for that. Have you ever been interested in playing? I had been indeed. Next time, Sourbeard's Dungeons and Dragons. We play D&D and Sourbeard has a lot of tantrums. 2. So this story starts in middle school and ends in high school. So this lasts a bit, and the middle school part will end up being shorter. For context, I was very cringy looking back in middle school. Though no one was their best selves back then, I hope that Busbeard has grown out of this even after I broke off contact and is moving on with a better life. Though I don't know, and truthfully don't want to know, if it means getting back in contact. So to start off the story. For real this time, I promise. I switched into the school that her Neckbeard went to after some excessive bullying and a switch of a house. After making some friends, turns out he was part of that group. Oh boy, pass me, you're in for it. After some simple chatting, turns out Busbeard also liked anime just like me, and was obsessed with Star Wars, unlike me. But I did know a bit about it. I thought, hey, this guy could be a really good friend. So day-to-day life was fun. I had a good group of friends that were like me, and not so like me. Then Busbeard found out I could draw, so he had asked me to teach him. I thought this was my chance to help my friend out with something I liked to do. I readily agreed. After a while, Busbeard drew me a picture. It was a human, Sans, from Undertale. Oh, when I said I was cringe, I wasn't kidding. At the time, I was obsessed with Sans. I even wanted to be Sans in real life. Asked me how I cringe at you. I thought this was so sweet. Busbeard was trying to draw for me. We even made a drawing together of a Star Wars girl in some uniform. I think she was a stormtrooper. But I'm not really sure, it's been a while. I still have both drawings, so that way I can look back at my old art and remember the choices I made when I was younger. After the drawings, and me trying to teach Busbeard to draw like me, we had become close. So close, in fact, that we walked and rode our bikes home together every day that we hung out. Busbeard would bike to my neighborhood with me. During this time is when I learned that Busbeard was kinda transphobic and homophobic. I thought that wasn't something that could end a friendship. I chose to just ignore it. The transphobic Busbeard would say stuff like, "Trans people weren't real people, and you can't be anything other than what you're assigned at birth." Also, stuff like people in a same-sex relationship were wrong and is a sin. He was weirdly religious. By the end of middle school, I considered him one of my closest friends. We talked to each other on Discord. At that time, I didn't have a phone, and Discord was the only way to stay in contact with friends outside of school. On one of the last days of school, Busbeard asked where my bag was. I told him. He snuck a note and some popcorn into my bag. If I remember right, the note wasn't creepy. It was nice, if anything. Now onto the part where high school starts, his freshman year, and every day I sit next to him on the bus, to and back. I would watch him play on his phone, and even play on the phone occasionally. We would talk a lot, just being friends. With my group of new friends at high school, I would flirt and mess around with my female friends that I was close with. Turns out, in his eyes, that was wrong. After Busbeard started after-school activities, we never sat together again. In fact, we just stopped talking and being friends. Until he messaged me off of Discord, asking if I still use Discord. Which I did, so I responded. Busbeard apologized for just kinda abandoning me as a friend. One of the weirdest things, he started quoting a song to me. It was Let Her Go by Passenger. He kept saying, "Only knew I loved her when I let her go," and other random lyrics from the song, though past me kinda just ignored it and asked something along the lines of, "If you cared about me even as a friend, why did you stop talking to me and start ignoring me?" Turns out his awesome, totally legit reason for leaving me as a friend was because he thought, for one, I was a lesbian, and that I was in a relationship with one of my friends when I had joked about going on a date with her. Apparently, Busbeard had overheard that. I ignored this red flag that was billowing in the wind. I told him I joke like that with my friends, and I'm, for one, not dating any of my girlfriends, and I'm not a lesbian. We then agreed to be friends again. He even told me about how he doesn't get girls, and it's so unfair, and he should get girls. I had wanted to boost his confidence, and told him I used to like him, even if it wasn't true. Busbeard does a full 180, and goes something like, "Hey, I think I still like you. Do you still like me?" And I just tell him something like, "This ship passed, and it's not going to happen, and we will just be friends." That was a totally normal conversation, right? Yeah, sure it was. Pretty soon we decided to hang out again, even setting up a meeting where we could hang out at a park near both of our houses. After hanging out for an hour or two, we decided to head home. I was still into anime at the time, and Busbeard asked me about it, so I told him about some that I had watched. Then out of nowhere, he starts talking about watching hentai. I'm just weirded out majorly. But I didn't tell him to stop or not talk it with anyone, let alone a friend that's a girl. It's weird. Gosh, I wish I had. It makes me want to slam my head into the wall when I think about how passive I was back then. Thankfully, we were nearing his neighborhood, so we split paths. Then we go back to pretty much not talking like before. So much for being friends, am I right? Then after a while, Busbeard messages me again, asking if we were still friends. So close past me, so close. Leave before it gets as bad as it will, please. Though me being passive and forgiving about how weird he was, I said something like, "Yeah, we're still friends." And he's like, "Great," and starts talking to me again. This is when the virus starts, so I had nothing better to do than talk. So we talk. And he brings up his anime porn addiction again, and guess what I do? I decide to ignore that and just keep talking to him as a normal person. Then the thing that made me block him comes up, when we're having a normal conversation, and he goes, "Hey, can I tell you a funny story?" "Sure." "So it was freshman year. We were riding the bus home,
and you had the window seat. Some of your friends were across from you, and you leaned over me to try and either give or take something. But when you were leaning over me, your boobs were pressing into my arm. So I just sat there biting my tongue because, I didn't want to say anything, because it would have been awkward after. And I didn't want to move because that would have been even worse.
After he finished his little story, I was seriously grossed out. I had always had a large chest. After that, I felt really objectified, so I asked him why he would tell me any of that. And he goes something along the lines of,
I thought it was funny, so I wanted to tell you.
I just felt so creeped out. This wasn't the first time he went on a rant about a girl. Busbeard had done this to one of my friends, telling me she was so pretty and waved and said hi to him while she was working, but he wasn't wearing deodorant, so he was just too nervous to say hi. After Busbeard messaged me that, I did tell her and told her I got creepy vibes off of that, and to probably not talk to him for a while. I can give advice, but can't take my own to save my life. So after Busbeard talking to me about my chest, I told him that's not okay, and it's never okay to do something like that to any friends. And after that he apologized, but the damage had been done. After talking to some of my friends, I wasn't sure if I should block him or keep being his friend. At the time, I was still willing to be his friend. Even after that, because I had the mentality that it was easier to keep a friend than make one. All of my friends that I had told about this said, yeah, block him, don't be his friend. So after a day or two, I blocked Busbeard, and I deleted all the messages we shared together. All but one, which I had sent to a bunch of my friends. So, he honestly isn't the worst Neckbeard, but he still made me uncomfortable. And this was a guy I thought was my friend. 3. To help with context of who I was at the time. Mid-20s, undiagnosed autistic woman, working full-time at the local post office contact center, standard office job on the phone most of the time. Average height, slim build, brightly dyed hair, and lots of tattoos. So one lunch break I headed down to the smoking area out front of our office building as usual, to have a quick cigarette before eating. It was a very stressful job. I was receiving calls from unhappy people about lost parcels, about 80 to 100 per day on a good day. I am generally a friendly person when approached, so when a random man in a white lab coat over a full clown outfit, with generic clown makeup and standard joke shop quality wig came over to the smoking area, I politely smiled and looked back to my phone. He walked straight up to me. There were a few other people around also on their smoke and lunch breaks. They were all standing in groups, and I was standing alone at the time. I looked up, and he had placed himself directly in front of me, and I noticed there was a lanyard, name tag, and he was holding a tablet. These identified him as one of the workers for a charity I'm familiar with that works in the area, which dresses as clowns to entertain the sickly children in the hospital, so that's absolutely fine to me, and explained the outfit. I couldn't tell what he actually looked like due to the makeup and such. All I can say is he was a bit taller than me and average to slightly larger physical build, no facial hair. He politely said hello and introduced himself. I pulled out my headphones and politely listened to the clearly scripted spiel about the charity, what they do, sign up to donate, etc., and that was fine. He did a good job, whatever, all sweet. Just a regular everyday social interaction, right? If that were the case, I wouldn't bother writing about it here, would I? I actually signed up. At the time, the job I had was paying well, and it was a charity I knew of and already supported morally, so I chucked my details in the tablet thing, all good. Thanked him and stubbed out my cigarette ready to continue on my merry way. He suddenly asked,
"Do you know who the Joker is?"
I'm slightly confused, but I do have some visible tattoos from some nerdy pop culture stuff, so I figured it was maybe just that. I didn't want to be rude, and we had just had a whole ass sort of conversation about the charity, so I just replied honestly, "Yeah, like DC Joker, sure, why?"
"Want to see my Joker impression?"
I'm just on my lunch break," and bang! He had slammed his hand on the bin I had been using as an ashtray.
"Ladies and gentlemen, we are tonight's entertainment."
I didn't know what to do, so I just kind of stopped where I was, with one foot walking away, and I just watched. 5 minutes doesn't feel like a long time when you're watching a movie or browsing the internet or something. It most certainly does when a strange man in full clown gear and a lab coat spends that entire time smacking his lips and doing a very average, albeit thoroughly memorized, kudos to him for getting the lines right I suppose, impression of the Joker in the middle of the pavement in a business area of a city on Monday afternoon, while making very intense and intentional eye contact between large dramatic movements, flailing his tablet around. He acted out the entire scene. At first, "Where did I get these scars?" one, instead of Batman dropping in and punching him in the face at the end of the speech, he ended it by repeating, "Why so serious?" several times, each time a little more spitty. When he finally finished, he just looked at me expectantly. Oh shit. Fuck. What was this, some kind of neckbeard mating dance? I couldn't be rude. I was in a lanyard with my workplace on it, and I mean technically he didn't do anything wrong, just something really, really, really freaking weird. So I just stammered out something about how he has a great memory for scripts and basically ended up speedwalking to the elevator that required a pass for entry, as I knew he physically couldn't follow me there. Sure, it meant skipping my actual meal for lunch that day, but better than the alternative. 4. So I'm sure most of you are aware what Beyblade is. That anime that was huge at the beginning of the 2000s, then fell out of existence once KB Toys closed down. They're little plastic toys that you spin from a launcher and they fight each other. When I was a kid, it was the coolest thing to watch. Admittedly, it's still pretty cool as an adult, but it just doesn't have the same effect. That being said, they have rebooted the show a few times to where they are now with Beyblade Burst. As the name implies, they are specifically made to basically explode. With the original sets they made, that was rare and something to behold. That was almost a guarantee. Anywho, with the new show being relaunched in recent years, it has brought back some old fans, some such as myself, and some not-so-savory people, what we call neckbeards. Being that I had recently got back into collecting them, I wanted to host a Beyblade tournament at my local comic book shop. The owner is a close friend of mine, and said it was a good idea to bring more people into the shop. So I hung up flyers around town and even was allowed to post one up in the Beyblade section of the local Walmart, not knowing that doing this tournament was a huge mistake. So the day of the tournament rolls around, and I'm getting all the stadiums ready and signing kids in, and all of a sudden the air around me gets really dense. And before you could see him coming, you could smell him. I turned around and there he was, Beyblade Beard. This dude, I kid you not, looked to weigh over 400 pounds, carrying a 2-liter of Mountain Dew, wearing some obscure anime shirt, a ponytail, and of course a fedora. "Hi, sir, are you here to sign up?" I begrudgingly asked, nearly losing my nose from the stench.
Well, duh. Why else would I be here? I'm here to let it rip,
he replies. Okay. Well, sign your name here, and once everyone else is here, we'll start the tournament. All the kids start piling in. Surprisingly, there was a decent mixture of ages, from OG fans to younger kids, whose first exposure to the hobby was the newest series. Once all the participants signed in, the tournament was underway. Not much happened in the first round. Beyblade Beard was actually civil and won his first match. Round 2 rolls around, and that's when things start to heat up. I should probably warn you now if you're triggered by assault. So, regular Beyblade rules are best 2 out of 3. You set up your bay, say 3, 2, 1, go, or if you're cringy, you say let it rip, like the original anime, and then you let the luck of the spinning toy tops play out. Well, Beyblade Beard was matched up against an 11-year-old, so when the 11-year-old won the first bout in that round, Beyblade Beard wasn't happy.
Hey, you're cheating! You didn't say let it rip!
He literally just yelled at an 11-year-old. This dude looks to be 35, mind you, and everyone is now staring at him. "What's the problem?" I asked calmly.
This little twat didn't say let it rip while we were lunching.
Beyblade Beard exclaims. "That's not required at tournaments, sir. That's only in the show," I replied.
"Whatever," he protests.
He then proceeds to win the next 2 launches to move on to the semi-finals. This round he is facing a 14-year-old.
"You going down, old man?"
This 14-year-old says jokingly, and you could obviously tell it was a joke tone by the voice.
"Fuck you, kid, I'm not old, and I'm totally gonna win. I'm gonna make Beyblade into an Olympic sport."
I kid you not, that's what this lord of a man said. "Sir, I can't have you cussing at children. One more outburst and you're going to be disqualified," I retorted. He muttered something under his breath, which I believe to the extent of,
"Fuck you too, I'm gonna win and show you,"
but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, he wins the first launch and discreetly flips his 14-year-old off. I just give him the dirty eye at this. In all honesty, I should have kicked him then and there. And I wish I had, because what happens next is just awful. The kid wins the next 2 launches, knocking Beyblade Beard out of the tournament, and boy was he not happy.
"What? This is bullshit. I can't have been beaten by some fetus. My Bey was obviously superior,"
he shouts, but before I was able to step and say anything, the 14-year-old chimes in,
"What was that about winning and making this kid's game an Olympic sport, old man?"
Beyblade Beard shrieks at this. He then launches into the kid and punches this 14-year-old straight in the nose. Granted, it didn't look to be that strong of a punch. Nonetheless, I leapt across the stadium they were at and tackled this fat sack of crap to the ground and shoved his face into the ground. The cops were promptly called. We gave the report to the police, and to even further the case, the store had security cameras up in place to see the whole incident. He was swiftly arrested on charges of assaulting a minor and taken to jail. I'm not sure what happened after that. To this day, I have not seen that fat, smelly man. 5. This all takes place in high school gym class with my group of friends, Mercedes and Jim Beard. Though he seemed to have decent hygiene nor a beard, he was just creepy and into anime. But it's a beard on the inside that counts, right? Well, every day Mercedes, me, and our group of friends would be minding our business, and then at the same time every day, Jim Beard would come speed-walking over to talk about a game we all liked, which was fine at first. I mean, I knew Jim Beard since we were in 5th grade, and even then he came off a little weird. As every dumb person in these situations, I shrugged it off as some kid who didn't have a lot of friends, but oh boy was I wrong. So for a bit of context, I wear a moth necklace every day. It was given to me by my mother figure, and I refused to take it off since. Jim Beard took interest in it for some reason.
"What's that, Noel?"
"Oh, it's my moth necklace. Look, isn't it really pretty?"
"Watch someone have a matching necklace with you. You're gonna have your own romance anime. Your childhood friend is gonna start making moves on you."
"My childhood friend isn't here. They're in Texas. They moved away."
"They're gonna move back and you're gonna have a romance anime."
"What? Jim Beard, I have a girlfriend." I didn't really know where he pulled a romance anime out of his ass, but he was really insistent on it. I was uncomfortable and just ignored him. The rest of the day he would follow Mercedes and me around, talking about it. Even the next day he would not shut up about the idea. His next idea to try and win over a reaction from me was scaring Mercedes and I. For context, I am extremely easy to scare. I flinch at everything because of PTSD, and so does Mercedes. Jim Beard finds it very amusing. He would start coming up to us and scaring Mercedes, to which I started becoming protective over her. Every time Jim Beard was around, I would protect Mercedes, always ready to pull her away from him. He must have seen this as an opportunity or something, because he would come behind me and squeeze my waist, which would cause me to gasp and yelp. Jim Beard screamed that I moaned, and my friends would burst out laughing at my uncomfortable denial. For the next week, Jim Beard would come behind me and try to get me to moan for him by squeezing my waist. I was made extremely uncomfortable by this, but I was too scared to say anything, as was Mercedes. But we were both super mad. His last attempt? We were talking, unfortunately, and he was describing my romance anime to me again. This time he was rambling on about how I was going to have a harem, which I tried to shut down because I had a girlfriend and am monogamous.
"You're gonna have the student council all over you, Noel."
Yeah, right. I get bitches, you don't. What he said in response gave me third-hand embarrassment.
I don't like bitches, they're impure. I like 'em pure.
I went through the 5 stages of grief at speeds unknown to man. He was one of those guys who puts value on a woman based on how many partners she's had. Great. I was a little scared for myself because at the corner of my mind, my paranoid brain was telling me, is he mistaking your cottagecore style for a trad wife? Oh, Lord have mercy. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Neckbeards in the Wild, episode 71. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do share it around. I greatly appreciate it when you do that. Right, we have a little birthday shout out to do, I think today. Pretty sure I had one on the 12th. Nope, delete that. There we go, right. Okay, this one goes to Tawaga. And she is 32 years old today. Have a very happy birthday to you. Let's see. Nope, that's the only one for today. Alright, now before we go, I'd like to sing happy birthday. And apparently those dogs want to join in, so let's see if they can keep in tune. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tawaga. Happy birthday to you. Yep, out of tune. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.